All right, well, it's NCAA tournament time, but we're also closing in on the Major League Baseball season. So, how can we combine the two? Baseball bracketology. We did this on the show today with listeners. We let them make the choices for who would advance in our brackets for the baseball season. But now I'm going to run you through it the way I see it for the year 2016 in Major League Baseball. All the seedings are based on records from a year ago. I got my National League regions over there and my American League regions right over here. Of course, there are only 15 teams in each league, so a couple teams get a bye. We'll give it to the World Series participants from a year ago, the Kansas City Royals, your world champs, and the New York Mets on the National League side, who won the National League. So let's just go ahead and start filling out. First round, we got Cleveland versus Baltimore. Baltimore Orioles had a really tough offseason in my estimation. They ended up trying to scramble, spend a lot of money at the tail end of the year, but they still are weak in the outfield and have a lot of questions in their starting rotation, which is one place that the Cleveland Indians do not. They've been overrated the last couple of years, but I think Cleveland is going to finish with a better record this season than the Baltimore Orioles, so I'm going to advance the Cleveland Indians based on the strength of their starting pitching. Number 5 seed, the Houston Astros versus the 12 seed, your Seattle Mariners. Of course, we get to this matchup of all the matchups. And I think this is closer than what most people are going to tell you. I kind of like the Seattle Mariners to have a shot at being better than the Houston Astros this year, because I think the Astros are going to have a little bit of a setback from a year ago. All of their progress they made last season, I think, was premature. But I look at these two teams, and I can't deny that Houston is slightly more talented. So I'm going to, by a slight margin, going to go with the Houston Astros to advance to our second round. Yankees, White Sox, I think these two teams are both going to be at the bottom of their divisions this year. Not in last place, potentially, but vying for last place. Still, the Yankees should have one of the best back ends of the bullpen in Major League Baseball history, and the White Sox, I don't know, can overcome that. So by the slightest of margins, I'm going to advance the New York Yankees. Number 3, the Texas Rangers versus the 14 seed, the Detroit Tigers. I do expect the Tigers to bounce back. Justin Verlander and Anibal Sanchez, probably what their entire season is about this year once they team them with Jordan Zimmerman. But the Texas Rangers, in my estimation, might be the team to beat in the American League. A full season with Cole Hamels, a half season with Yu Darvish, and a lot of young players ready to sort of take that next step in their career. So I'm going to advance the Texas Rangers, the 3 seed, to the next round. Angels, Red Sox, based on last year, this would have been obviously Angels over Red Sox, a 6 seed versus an 11 seed. But I happen to think the Angels are going to be one of the worst teams in the American League. Mike Trout is terrific, but I see a lot of holes with this team, and their future looks even bleaker than 2016. Boston Red Sox, they had some issues last year with who they added to the team. This year they're taking the approach, hey Pablo Sandoval, hey Hanley Ramirez, if you're not the best solution, we're going to go with somebody else. I like that mentality. You want to talk about young talent taking the next step forward, that's Boston. So I'm going to go with Boston with maybe a slight upset to some, advancing as my 11 seed. Twins, Rays, very interesting, both very young teams. I think they're both going to take steps forward this year. Minnesota could have one of the most dangerous offensive young teams in baseball, and the Rays should have one of the better starting rotations in Major League Baseball. I'm going to give Tampa Bay the slight edge because I will take pitching over hitting, but I think both of those teams are going to be better this year. And finally, you got Toronto and Oakland, the 2 seed versus the 15 seed. I'm not as high on the Blue Jays as most people, but I don't think there's any doubt about it that the Toronto Blue Jays are better than the Oakland Athletics. So there we advance to that spot. And, all right, let's switch over to the National League with our baseball bracketology. As I said, the Mets are going to get a bye because they won the National League a year ago, so I've already advanced them to the second line. So the 8 seed, based on last year's standings, would be the Arizona Diamondbacks versus team in their own division, the 9 seed, the San Diego Padres. I think the Padres are going to be going to have another rough season. This team, though, the Arizona Diamondbacks, a lot of people talking about big money on Zach Greinke, big trade for Shelby Miller. I don't like the moves that they made in the offseason. I don't think they're a team that can afford $35 million per year player. And I think they made a terrible trade for Shelby Miller. But there's no doubt that those additions are going to help them this season. This is a dangerous team to watch this year. I also love Patrick Corbin, their number 3 starter, who I think may actually make a Cinderella run toward the Cy Young. So no question about it, I'm going to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks advancing to the second round. All right, I got the Dodgers, the 5 seed, and most people's favorite in the National League West, taking on the 12 seed Rockies. Rockies just aren't anywhere close to being ready to compete for a playoff spot. And although I think the Dodgers made some mistakes this offseason and I think are a much weaker team and need to watch out for the Diamondbacks this year, I'm clearly going to take them to advance. Clayton Kershaw, dangerous lineup, LA moves on. All right, 4 seed the Pittsburgh Pirates against the 13 seed Atlanta Braves. Braves are 100% in total rebuilding mode. I think they actually are going to have an exciting young team this year, but they're a long way away from being as good as what the Pittsburgh Pirates are. I think the Pirates are in the conversation for being one of the 3 or 4 teams that I would consider World Series champs. So Pittsburgh advances to the next round. Cardinals, 3 seed, man, they're as consistent as it gets. I think they fall behind the Cubs and the Pirates this year in the National League Central, but it's still the Cardinals and the Reds, like the Braves, total rebuilding mode. So my 3 seed advances. St. Louis moves to the second round. 6, the Giants, you know what it is. It's an even year, 2016. They always win in even years. They're taking on the 11 seed Brewers. The Brewers, like the Reds, like the Braves, they are in rebuilding mode. So I don't think there's any question here. We advance the San Francisco Giants in an even year. All right, Nationals, the 7 seed, the biggest disappointment in Major League Baseball a year ago versus the Marlins, the 10 seed. I think the Marlins are improved. I don't think it'll be a laughing stock this year, but I still think that 500 is best that they can expect for this upcoming season. Where the Washington Nationals, I'm expecting big things out of Steven Strasburg in his walk year, his free agent year, and with Bryce Harper, the best player in the league, I think that this should be a no-brainer. Washington, new manager there in Dusty Baker, they move on to the next round. And finally, for those that think that the Chicago Cubs may not be as dominant as what sports writers are suggesting, you're wrong. This might be the most complete team I've seen in over a decade. The Cubs, the 2 seed versus the 15 seed. Phillies are terrible. Cubs are great. I'm going to advance the Chicago Cubs to the next round. All right, we move to the Sweet 16 round in our baseball bracketology. You see the teams that I advanced from round 1 to round number 2, so let's get it going. Kansas City Royals, the defending champs of the world, taking on the Cleveland Indians. As you can see, they were our 8 seed to start the tournament. I think that the Indians are going to be slightly improved, but I think people are getting carried away with this team. And those Pacoda morons thinking that the Kansas City Royals are only going to win 74 games this year, nonsense. Kansas City is a complete team. Now, they might not repeat what they've done the last couple of years, but there's no way that they fall under 500. So I'm going to advance the Kansas City Royals because I'm not sure the Indians can finish over 500. Houston versus New York, that's our 5 seed, barely getting by the Mariners at 12 versus our 4 seed, the New York Yankees, barely getting by the White Sox at 13. I think both of these teams are going to actually slide back. They were playoff teams a year ago. I don't think either one of them will be a playoff team this year, but for our purposes, our bracketology purposes, I have to pick one to advance, and I'm going to take the young up-and-coming team over the fading old team in this matchup, and I'm going to advance the Houston Astros. Texas Rangers, Boston Red Sox, to me, these are the 2 teams to watch out for in the American League this year. I'm a big fan of Boston's young talent, but I think I might be a bigger fan of what the Texas Rangers are going to bring this season. So I'm going to advance very slightly the Texas Rangers right here to the next round. Finally, at the bottom, we've got 2 American League East teams, and I think this is a lot more even than what people are suggesting. I think the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be dangerous this year. Toronto Blue Jays, though, I can't see them falling too far from grace. Full season with Troy Tulowitzki for the Blue Jays. No doubt are going to be the most potent offense in Major League Baseball. And Marcus Stroman's improvements this year, they should take a leap forward with pitching as well. So I am going to say that Toronto, a lot closer than what you would imagine, is going to move on. And so there's my final 4 in the American League. I got Kansas City versus Houston, Texas versus Toronto. All right, Sweet 16 round for the National League. Here we go in our baseball bracketology. The New York Mets, the number 1 seed against the 8 seed Arizona Diamondbacks. I circle Arizona as being a much improved team this season, a team that can win the National League West. But I don't think they would win the National League East if they were in it. The New York Mets have one of the best pitching staffs, young pitching staffs we've ever seen in the history of the game. So I am going to advance the New York Mets to the next round. Noah Syndergaard, watch out for him this year. He might end up being the team's ace, believe it or not. Next matchup, we've got the 5 seed Los Angeles Dodgers versus the number 4 seed Pittsburgh Pirates. The Dodgers are going to be in the running in the National League West. But I think that they're a weaker team than that they were a year ago, having lost Zach Greinke after all. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think, are a major contender to take the whole damn thing this year in Major League Baseball. So I think this is an easy one for me. I'm going to advance Pittsburgh to the next round. All right, we got the 3 seed, the St. Louis Cardinals versus the 6 seed San Francisco Giants. Yes, I will always put St. Louis in every conversation for possibly winning the National League Central, but I do believe that they slip a little bit this season, finally, and I think that the San Francisco Giants, it's an even year, and they are ready to elevate themselves. I don't love the additions of Johnny Cueto and Jeff Samardzija with San Francisco, but I do believe Hunter Pence has a bounce-back big season. Buster Posey's an MVP candidate, and Madison Bumgarner's the best leader as a pitcher in maybe all of Major League Baseball. So I'm going to advance in a slight upset the San Francisco Giants to the next round. 7 seed, the Washington Nationals. I mean, they should be back this year. I mean, they got to play better than they did a year ago, but they're going to match up against the number 2 seed Chicago Cubs. I think this is the best team in Major League Baseball, so there's no way that I am going to pick the Washington Nationals to take out the Cubs. So let's advance Chicago to our National League Final 4. All right, our baseball bracketology continues. We are down to the Elite 8 in Major League Baseball. Let's go back to the American League. Our number 1 seed, Kansas City, against our number 5 seed, the Houston Astros. Well, I think I've said it in the last couple of rounds. I know I've advanced Houston this far, but I think they take a slight bump back this year. Beyond Dallas Keuchel, I'm not convinced there is an Astros starter that they can depend on for this upcoming season. They've got a question mark at first base, and they are counting on pretty much all of their young players to advance forward, and that doesn't always happen. Pretty sure Carlos Correa is the real deal and is going to have an even better season this year, but it might not be the case across the board for the Astros. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Royals, I mean, it's just really hard for me to ignore, despite a couple of bad moves in their offseason, including Ian Kennedy, which I don't understand that signing. It's hard for me to ignore just how good this team has been the last couple of years. I think they've hit their stride. I don't think they're satisfied. I'm going to advance the Kansas City Royals as my number 1 seed past the Houston Astros. If this was somebody else, though, I think I might be picking an upset, but I think Houston's a little overrated. All right, Texas is my number 3 seed. They're going to take on my number 2 seed, the Toronto Blue Jays. Terrific offense here. I like Marcus Stroman as their ace to have a pretty good year this year, but beyond that, I think there are question marks in the starting rotation, and I'm going to go ahead and advance the Texas Rangers out past the Toronto Blue Jays in this one. I like Rougned Odor and his progress as their second baseman. Look for Joey Gallo to make a big impact this year in a full season for the Texas Rangers once he gets called up, and I'm going to advance the Texas Rangers in a slight upset there over Toronto. So I got Kansas City and Texas in my American League Championship. On the National League side, Mets versus Pittsburgh. It's that tremendous pitching staff, that starting rotation for the New York Mets. I would say it's better than anyone else's in Major League Baseball. But man, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates are due at least to get out of that wild card round, right? I think the Pittsburgh Pirates, especially if Juan Nicasio is the real deal, as you showed in the spring to this point, then Ray Searage, their outstanding pitching coach, has done it again. He's found another piece to add to this. Bring up Tyler Glasnow, their superstar prospect pitcher, midway through the year. Pirates, by the end of the season, I think are going to be extremely dangerous. I think they're the biggest threat to the Cubs to win the National League, so I am going to advance the Pirates over the New York Mets. San Francisco Giants versus the Chicago Cubs. I know the Giants have tradition on their side. The fact that they win the World Series, it seems, every other year. They actually do win the World Series every other year, but there is no way I'm taking that nonsense over talent in terms of an evaluation. The Cubs are the most talented team in baseball. I am going to advance Chicago to the next round to give me the Final Four of Kansas City, Texas, and Pittsburgh versus Chicago. All right, so we come down to our Final Four. 2 teams in the American League, Royals, Rangers. 2 teams in the National League, Pirates, Cubs, both from the same division. Kansas City Royals have won the American League 2 years in a row. I don't think that's a fluke. I think they're going to again be obviously in contention. But boy, do I like this Texas Rangers team with an underrated bullpen in the second half a year ago, a starting rotation that will get Yu Darvish back in the second half. They'll have Cole Hamels for a full season. They've got an aggressive general manager and front office, so they will make the necessary additions at the trading deadline to get them where they need to go. Terrific infield defense with Beltre, Andrus, Rougned Odor, and Mitch Moreland. I think the Texas Rangers are the team that's going to represent the American League in the World Series this year based on our bracketology. I'm advancing Texas. On the National League side, tough decision here. Is it the Pittsburgh Pirates finally cashing in on the promise they've shown recently, or is it the Chicago Cubs, the team that everybody's talking about in Major League Baseball as being the most talented team in the game? I know it's been a long time, but my gosh, the talent here is just off the charts. If I was picking them last year, I'm picking them this year. I'm going with the Chicago Cubs versus the Texas Rangers in the World Series. And for the second year in a row, hopefully this time, I'm going to be accurate. And for the first time in over a century, I'm going to take the Chicago Cubs to win the World Series.